welcome to That's Jacqueline. Today I'm here with Stacey Haines. Stacey Haines is here to share her experience with Elizabeth Croydon. For those of you who don't know, Elizabeth Croydon came out in a Medium article recently accusing Shahid Buttar of sexual harassment from an experience that she said she had about 10 years back. Welcome, Stacey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Hi. So there's like a lot of history here. I actually had a personal experience with Elizabeth Croydon, as you know. I wrote a five so far of a six-piece article about Elizabeth Croydon and some people who have had experiences with her. When I found out about this accusation, it's kind of hit me kind of funny because I had known Elizabeth Croydon to have made multiple accusations against myself and others. And so I decided that the appropriate thing to do would be to, tell the public what was happening and let them decide, what they think, whether or not they believe her story. So the first article, covered my experience, which was so much lesser than yours. And then multiple friends came forward and asked me to cover their part of the story, and that's where we met. Right, you had messaged me, I believe, through Twitter or something like that, saying that you too had an experience and that you were kind of afraid to come out, but that you felt like it was the right thing to do. So why don't we kind of just start off from the beginning? When did you meet Elizabeth Croydon?
I met her at the end of 2009 at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. I was doing comedy there and knew some people. One was a mutual friend of mine and Elizabeth's, and introduced me when she had returned to the Comedy Store after an absence of some time, and we became friendly.
Okay. So and this is kind of echoing part of the article. So I know some of the history, but obviously our viewers don't. So from there, what happened? How did she end up a roommate at your house?
We met at the Comedy Store. I don't know if it was a couple weeks or maybe a month or a little more. She was talking about how she needed a place to stay, that she had been living in her car, or perhaps she phrased it that she was going to have to resort to living in her car. I don't exactly recall. And I thought that we had been friendly, and it was, discussed to be a short amount of time at first, and um like 2 weeks, and she was offering some cash for the, being able to live with me, and I thought I could use a little cash, so I agreed to have her come and stay with me. I lived in Hollywood at the time.
Okay. So just to recap, so you guys were both at the Comedy Store, right? And you guys were doing stand up. Is that correct? Okay. So she moved in with you, and I obviously there were some problems that happened. But how long was it until you started to kind of see that there were some issues that you were worrying about with her?
I think the first issues that were coming up were, the promises to pay were falling short. I'm sure she gave me a little money at first, but, uh, you know, telling me that more would be coming when she spoke to her father, or, when something came in for her, and so it was sort of dangled, and that it was on its way, and you know that wasn't materializing. And as much as I like being able to help people out, there was supposed to be a little bit of a back and forth of helping each other out. And so that was up front one of my first red flags. She also, I had a pull out bed, and she stayed on it a couple of nights maybe a little longer. But then one day I came home and she had moved into a storage closet, a good sized walk in storage closet, but she had moved into the closet. Um, I did have a studio apartment. It was, there was a partition, so there was a sort of separation of spaces, but it was still, open.
Mm.
And um, when I asked her why she was in the closet with her belongings and, just kind of like huddled up in there with, her comforter and all of her things, and, which was also blocking me from being able to get to things like the vacuum cleaner and whatnot that might have been stored in that closet. Um, her answer was to be kind of hysterical and tell me that she needed privacy, and she was, telling it to me in a very frantic and excited kind of way, as if I, was denying her privacy. I took it. Um, and so I sort of, you know, backed off of the topic, and over the next, it was turning into 1 week after another week, and after, uh, I would hear her in the closet making phone calls to what I believed was her father, maybe her mother and father, but I think more specifically it was her father back in Maryland. And um and I just remember being able to hear some snippets because she would get very loud and crying and, you know, saying, that she needs money or she's not going to come home. I had the recollection of her father attempting to draw her back to, you know, their home in Maryland to help her.
Okay. So these calls were happening and she's now staying in the storage closet, and you're not getting the money that you're expecting from her. Um did you ever like voice that this was a problem, that she needed to pay you or leave, or that you didn't want her staying in the closet?
Right. Yes. I at some point, kind of early on, she asked me for a key. And at first, I was kind of hesitant. I think just, I don't know, maybe my gut was smarter than I was being at the, you know, just trying to survive in Hollywood on a artist salary. Um,
Right.
that that I was uh hesitating giving her the key, but she was persistent, and obviously if it was a close friend, I would have given them a key to come and go since I had a job and I had other things that I was doing. Um, so I did give her the key, but then after the money was coming and I was getting, troubled by her being in the closet and you know, her her manic kind of episodes, you know, I'm not trying to diagnose, but there was just this kind of hysteria that she would have that kind of ranged from extreme anger to extreme crying, as
Right.
well as this sort of almost like she was trying to hypnotize you sometimes, where she's looking at you and telling you, you know, in this way that, you're the one with the problem, that you have a mental illness that probably has never been diagnosed, but you have this um, these these symptoms that are obvious that there is something wrong with you, when all I'm doing is asking for my key back, and that she either needs to pay some money or move on. And
Right.
um,
So,
so it's
so in my
getting a
interview,
little scary at a certain point.
so in the interview that I had with you, you told me that you were working as a waitress, and things kind of progressed, and you had asked her to leave, and you had gotten a call or something from your landlord. Can you kind of briefly explain what happened there?
Sure. Um, I was, um,
Oh, there's a fly in here.
I was working at a restaurant that wasn't far from where I lived in Hollywood, and there was an incident where um, my landlord was saying to me that this person staying with me, and by now she had been staying with me for longer than the 2 weeks that we originally discussed. I mean, it may have gotten up to 2 months. Um, and he was saying that she needed to leave because she's not on the lease, and there's other things on the lease that said that I really can't have guests for that long, and I think that he actually was having negative experiences with her when I wasn't there to witness them, because otherwise I think he wouldn't have really minded. I think it was a situation that he said, you know, she's doing damage in the apartment complex, which to the renovations that were going on at the time, there were these renovations where there was like tiles being set and, other things. And he told me that she was tearing down um, the tape that was to indicate that you weren't to cross that area, and she would just tear down the tape and stomp over the tiles, and you know they would be a mess that I imagine then they had to be in some way repaired or repositioned, or um but it was annoying to him, and he told me that she had to leave. And so I was sharing that with her, hoping even with the, added gravitas of my landlord having something to say about it, that, you know, she
She'd
would
move on.
just follow through and move on. Right. When, when she didn't, um, you know, he, he shared with me at some point, and it may have been, I told her that I wanted the key back, and I had to go to work. And I remember that there was a moment that she said something to me like, I'm going to be having some people over later, and I said no. you know, I don't approve of that whatsoever. It's well past you being here, and I now don't want you bringing people over here to boot.
Right.
And she said something, I don't recall exactly what it was, but the way she said it, there was like a smirk on her face, and a wink to her voice about like, oh, what do you think's going to happen, or something that just totally chilled me, thinking that something really was possibly underway, awful, that was going to happen while I was out at work, whether she was
Right.
having people over and they were going to trash the place or pull all my things out, or I didn't know what. But I just remember being so chilled by it. And you know, I guess she left, or I could even have been over the phone. I don't exactly recall. Um but that I called my landlord right away. And in fact, he wasn't exactly my landlord. He was the apartment manager, but because we never
Right.
saw the actual landlords, we were called him our landlord. But anyway, so I called him and I was in a panic because I had to be at work, and he said, "Do you want me to change the locks?" And I said, "Yes." Come. And he came right over and he did it within 10, 15 minutes. And I was on my way out to work. He told me, "You got to get her things out of the apartment," because he was well versed in the legality of the situation. Um, I was not. Unfortunately, like I said, I had to go to work immediately. So I did not get her belongings out right away. Um, and that
Okay.
became a
So
big problem.
okay, so let's kind of skip ahead. So when you so he changes the locks and you go to work. Then what happens from there?
I'm at work, and I recall it must have been a short shift where I had, a mid shift, meaning that I left in the afternoon and I was going to come back early evening. It wasn't going to be a late shift.
Right.
And when I got to work, I knew that my plan was to leave work at the time that I was expected to and go home and, get her belongings and put them in the hallway for her to pick up, you know.
Right.
Um, but while I was there at my job, a phone call came in and I was called to the hostess desk to take the phone call. And it was Elizabeth, and she was obviously very upset. And I guess I really can't blame her for that. The right thing that I should have done was to put my her
Right.
belongings out right away. But of course, you know,
Uh-huh.
bicker over that and say that she should have been gone by then too. But anyway, so she was quite upset. She was, you know, hollering at me that I needed to come right away to let her into the apartment to get her belongings. And there was no way I was even going to let her into the apartment at that point. I would put her belongings out. I was not going to let her in. I remember
Right.
feeling like there was just no way. But explained to her, I said, "Look, I'm at my job right now. I'm getting off. I don't know if it was 6 p.m. I don't know if it was 8 p.m., but it was an earlier time." And I said, "I'm at my job right now. I will be home soon," because I think by the time she called me, more than half the shift was already over. "And I will go ahead and put your belongings out. No problem." Well, she called several more times. In fact, the manager came to me at one point and said, "You want me to just tell her that you're not taking her calls anymore?" And I said, "Yes." But I was also mortified because, you know, who needs this kind of added stress on, you know, jobs that you're trying to do that, managers can get very particular about what's going on when it affects them and their business. So it was a little unsettling. And then the manager had to come back to me even a little bit later because this time it was a police officer on the line. And so I had to take that call. The police officer, just basically wanted to hear what I had to say. And he asked me if she was on the lease. And I said, "No, she is not." And he said, "She has belongings in the apartment." And I said, "Yes, she does, but I'm about an hour or maybe two away from being off of my shift here at my job. I will be home and I will be able to get those items out for her right away." And he seemed satisfied about that. Um, so in the background, I could hear Elizabeth screaming about how this is illegal and what I'm doing is illegal. And, the police need to make me come home right now and, you know, let her in to get her belongings.
Okay. Okay. So basically, you didn't leave. So you came home, right? Was Elizabeth there when you got home?
No, thankfully. I mean, I was quite anxious about that possibility, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But thankfully, she was not.
Okay, so you were able to successfully get her things out, and from what I remember, she was able to get her things. And so, what was your thinking at that point?
I was just relieved. I was sorry that it came to the situation that it came to. I was upset that it came to the situation it came to. You know, I thought that, yeah, there might be some cattiness when, all was said and done, but I, thought that the worst was over.
Okay. So, one of the things that you kind of talked to me about when we had our interview was that during that time that she was living with you, that she was already starting to cause problems at the club. Can you give me a really brief description of what those were, just a summary, and then we can talk about kind of what happened after she left your house.
Sure. Well, there was, you know, at the time that I met her and she came to live with me, I was going through a personal, you know, reevaluation of my romantic and sexual life, and I was making the conscious decision to be celibate so that I could, make better choices when it came to, any romantic encounters or dates or what have you. And
Right.
I shared that with Elizabeth when we were friendlier, right towards the beginning of, you know, our getting to know each other. Um, she, on the other hand, was, all over the place about how much sex she was having and all these different guys that she was having it with and all these different spots in the comedy store that she was having it in, um which, friends would talk about. I'd be like, wow, that's very different from how I'm handling things right
Right.
now.
So one of the things you had mentioned to me is that one of the reasons you told her that you were choosing to stay celibate was that you had been the victim of sexual assault, um, and that was that particularly too. You didn't trust your instincts where men were concerned, and so you were trying to kind of approach it from a different angle. When you told her about your sexual assault, did you expect that that was going to be something that was shared at the club or amongst others?
Um, I I really didn't expect that. Um, you know, she was very uh she had gotten into my journals. She had taken things that I had told her and started spreading them and using them with people at the comedy store to, it seemed, to mock me, to embarrass me, to make other people uncomfortable to be around me, which, she was actually quite effective at doing.
Okay. So after you got her out, you kind of gave me kind of a summary of what happened, but what was it like at the club for you after you got her out? What started to happen?
Well, at first, I would go to the club and she would follow, if she was there, which she usually was, she would follow me around screaming after me, whore, 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 just over and over, just, you know,
Randomly.
closely following and screaming that at me
Wow.
and drawing all sorts of attention, from customers, much less comics. Um, I know that there were comics and even members of the staff that would tell her to try and, cool it. But most people didn't want to start things with her because, she would just make things really uncomfortable and get loud and, you know, didn't react well to being told, to cool it. And so it was just becoming untenable. At one point, I think she was asked to stay away from the Comedy Store for a little while. I don't know if it was directly because of how she was treating me or if it was, sort of a roundabout, you know,
Way.
uh, time that they've asked her to stay away. And it wasn't a long time, it was maybe a couple weeks or a month. Um, and in the meanwhile, I heard from some of the comics that I was friends or at least friendly with that, she had been sharing all of this really intimate information about me, that she had claimed to people that I was either a hermaphrodite or really a man, and that I had attempted to sexually assault her by, you know, rubbing up against her and rubbing my supposed penis up against her, touching her breasts, things like that that were completely untrue, but mortifying to have people tell me
Yeah.
that she was saying things like that.
So, one of the things that you had told me is how she was, and I don't remember if you told me this was while you were living with her or if it was after she had finally moved out. How she had been, how part of her story when you about read her story about Shahid Buttar, that you were concerned with part of the story because, in your opinion, it echoed what she had actually done to you. That what she was saying he had done to her, he she had done to you. And do you remember what that was about?
Yeah, I was, you know, when the stories started to come out about Shahid Buttar, and I started to read the first one, I was just utterly shocked to even see her name, and I had to verify, could it possibly be another Elizabeth Croydon and not the one I know? But it turned out to be her, and I read her Medium article, and I was really stunned to see a couple of things in that article, and it wasn't even very long, that were so reminiscent of the kinds of things that happened or she said happened between us. One was the um, rubbing up against her. She accused me of rubbing up against her, and it sounded exactly similar to what she was claiming Shahid had done to her. And that wasn't the only thing. There was also her claiming that she told Shahid about being celibate, which was something that I had told her, and I don't ever recall her saying something of the sort to me about that being her
Right.
choice. It could
Well,
have
and you
happened later.
said that, and so let's clarify too, because you had told me specifically that that not just that you had told her that you were celibate, but that you had told her you were celibate because of a sexual assault, and that that's exactly what she claims in her article that she had been telling other people. Correct? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
it was very similar, and that she accused Shahid of, you know, attempting to mock her in public with people saying that, you know, we need to get her, you know, I can use the F word or shall I
Yeah.
just say F word?
Right. Sure. Yeah. Go for
You
it.
know, well, when I had shared that with her and we were on friendlier terms and we would actually go to the comedy store together, you know, or be at
Right.
other clubs together,
Yeah, as
excuse me,
roommates too.
she would um she would do exactly what she claimed in that Medium article that Shad did to her by going around and loudly announcing she has this booming voice and she would just loudly boom about how, you know, Stacy's celibate and we need to get her effed, you know, but she would use the exact word. And,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
who wants to F Stacy, you know, and, you know, it would attract attention and I'd be mortified again, not as mortified as I later would become with other things that she would say or do,
Right.
but I
Right.
did pull her, you know, I don't know if it was on the way back to my apartment or, you know, at some point during the night, you know, I would say to her, "Hey, you know, it's really uncalled for. That's not cool." And, you know, she'd pull that sort of gaslighting thing again about like, "Oh, you're just being silly or sensitive or you know, who cares? You know, I'm only trying to help, or, you know, whatever it is that she might have, you know, done to make it seem like I was the one being out of, you know, overly sensitive or out
Right.
of line for asking her to not do such a thing.
So, I mean, what was your kind of like overall feel? And obviously, like all of this is, I mean, this is your, he said, she said. This is your story of what you're saying that Elizabeth did to you. But what do you think would be? What do you think the motivations are for, like, especially for her coming out with this story with Shahid? I mean, obviously, you weren't there, and you don't claim to be there, and you don't claim to have known them at the time, so you weren't, so you can't speak as a witness, but what was your first thought when, um, wise, what was for coming out with this story that was basically like a carbon copy of what you've told me?
Um, well, because it was so similar sounding and, you know, repetitive and, you know, so weird, you know, I did question, you know, I want to have, you know, women who come out about sexual assault be believed and be
Right,
able, you know, get investigations and due process. Absolutely.
right,
And I would certainly even want that for her, for Elizabeth,
right.
you know, and
Mm-hmm.
let's see where an investigation leads, you
Right,
know? But, you know, there is also a part of me that thinks, well, this is kind of, I don't
too
know.
similar.
I want to say kind of phony sounding, you know, like
Right,
she's definitely got a reputation for saying things that are outlandish, for attempting to mark people for, you know, deeds that they're not doing, at
doing
least you know, from my perspective,
your
you
case.
know. So, you know,
So you had said before that she had said that she was having sex with all of these different people at the club. And you had mentioned that there was a specific person, you had mentioned to me, a specific person that she had claimed that she had one of these people that she had had sex with at the club. That was kind of a well-known comedian in that scene there, right? And that you later, had talked to him kind of as a friend for support when all of this was happening, and you were trying to kind of make sense of why she was acting the way she was, right? And you had mentioned to him that she had said that they had been intimate on multiple occasions. And what came out of that? What did he tell you?
You know, he just rolled his eyes when I brought it up. You know, we were just talking, I'm not even exactly sure how the whole conversation came about, but we were just talking, and I was just like, yeah, Elizabeth really, you know, pulled a number on me, but I guess, you know, she with you as well had said that she was having sex with you all over the comedy store in different places and stuff. By that point, I didn't believe it nearly so much as maybe I did at first. And he just, he kind of rolled his eyes and he was like, "Yeah, none of it's true."
Right.
So,
So, so back to kind of like what you were talking about. So, I mean, you and I are both, we spoke about this separately. We're both have been victims of sexual assault. And so so in my case, when I read her article, I I felt like I needed to come out and say something about the fact that I had known her to falsely accuse people and to harass people and to do some other malicious things, making up stories about them, twisting things they said, harassing them in general, like, through social media mostly, threatening their jobs, even some things that I would almost say, I don't know the legal if it's legally so, but I would consider almost like blackmail. Like, if you do this, I'm going to tell everybody the things you told me, is what she had told one of my close friends. And so they were all really afraid of her, and she'd kind of stalked them on Twitter and would go behind and make accusations using these straw accounts or these sock puppet accounts of hers. She would say things that they had told her in privacy, or she had twisted around, and was kind of harassing them that way, kind of, I think, maybe to make sure that it didn't stick to her. So I struggled really, really a lot, because I'm the same thing. I want to believe women, and I believe that when any person comes out, male, female, whatever, whoever is the offender in the situation, that they have a right to be heard, right? And they have a right to justice, and that there should always be an investigation. And so I want to clarify, probably as well as for yourself, you can kind of chime in what your thoughts are on it. But I want to clarify that I believe that you should investigate, and um, that you should at least give them some kind of credence, to that's a possibility, right? This is a
mhm,
possibility. And
yeah.
until all the evidence comes out, right? But in this case, I was really surprised and so shocked by my feelings on it, because I had such strong feelings about her dishonesty and who she was as an individual, and the pain and suffering that she had inflicted on so many of my friends. Her little attacks on me were very minimal. I recognized early on that it was going to be a problem, and I started warning friends, and then she kind of went after them. And unfortunately, in their cases, she was able to kind of use their positions of power to against them, and kind of to further the relationship, even when they wanted to be done with it. She just kind of, like, they were afraid to cut off ties with her, because she had made accusations that she would be malicious and that she would tell people things that they had told them. Um, but I really struggled, because there was so much history, right? So tell me kind of like what it was for you, because I mean, you kind of mentioned that, like, you want to believe women, but
Mhm.
there's a line there, right? There's a line where if you have enough information, that you have to take. It's one thing to believe women, but to ignore everything personally about an individual is a different story, right? What's the balance? What's the balance between getting justice for victims and believing women when you know the individual and you know the individual to be dishonest, like what do you do then? So what's your thoughts on it, Stacey? I gave you mine.
Um, well, to be honest, when I first read that Elizabeth Croydon was involved in um, allegations against Shahid, I didn't want to reach out. I was thinking it would be kicking up a hornet's nest to attempt to do that. She is a frightening person. I I was concerned that I would be, having to deal with her again. But as I read a little bit more into what Shahid was um, dealing with, I felt like at least I should tell the truth, um, not to um, cast any aspersions or I may have used the wrong word there, dispersions on anyone, but at least there's balance to the story. I had a story to tell. So some people were writing about it on Twitter, and I just happened to click on your Twitter message and just shared, "Oh, I know her, and I had a bad experience with her," to paraphrase what I wrote you. And we took it from there. Um, I honestly did not want to even attach my name to any stories, thinking maybe I could stay anonymous. But after discussing with you how many victims she has, which was really surprising to me. I mean, I knew that there would be other people, but
Right, but there was a
not
huge amount.
not
I was surprised by the
even
numbers. I truly was. I had hoped that the experience that I and my friends had had with her was maybe just sometimes people have difficult times in their lives, and they're under stress, or they are suffering from mental health issues, or maybe addiction issues, and maybe it changes their behaviors, or maybe they've just had a really rough time. And I was really hoping that that was the case, and that this kind of would come to light, and that maybe if she needed help some way, that she'd get help through the investigation,
right.
that people would closest to her would reach out to help her. I was really, really surprised when I started getting endless emails and voice messages and private messages and things stating that they had their own victim story. And so and that's where I decided to go ahead and continue with the series, because I decided, this is a pattern of abuse, in my opinion,
Right.
that and that if it's not stopped, if she doesn't get the help she needs to stop it, whatever that help is, I don't know if she has a mental health issue. I don't, personally. I'm not a doctor. Um, but either way, however she gets that help, she needs that help, right? There's two sides of the story, and part of that side is she has needs that aren't being met for some reason because she's acting out this way. So yeah, so either way, I'm not happy with how she treated my friends and the hell she put them through. I'm not happy about what she did to you. I'm not happy about what I believe she did to Shahid. I think I personally believe that this is, for whatever reason, this is a false story. Um, I'm not happy, about what she did to the other victims, but I still believe that, when somebody's struggling with something, that they have a right to, for people to help them get back to where they need to be. And that's kind of where I'm hoping that she gets. And I've talked to you too, and my um, the feeling I had from talking to you multiple times on the phone, we multiple times, to make sure that we got every line as factual as possible, because that's what was really important to me, is to make sure that we didn't exaggerate it, or make it sensational or something, that it was like exactly how you remembered it. And but one of the things I picked up from talking to you was what was that you did. You felt sorry for her. You didn't want her, wish her bad, but you had actually gone through a lot of trauma, and you were still experiencing a little, a lot. Well, not, little, maybe a little bit less now than was there, but you had you'd come out of a sexual assault only to have someone you put trust in again do something to you that was hard for you, and that had a sexual vein to it. It was attacking your sexuality and your individuality and who you were in a
And
time when you were.
a, a
Go ahead.
betrayal of trust,
Right.
you
And
know.
yeah, and in a time you were trying to build yourself back up. And so I understand that is really um it's hard to get through when you keep, having people hurt you. So can you maybe tell kind of about some of the after effects that you've experienced from, what you've dealt with Elizabeth specifically?
Well, for example, I mean, I've had to keep my social media accounts on very high privacy uh, monitors. I've
You
been
mentioned you
using.
changed them, right? And you had changed them from back then,
I
the new
started
accounts.
using. I made new uh, email accounts or used old ones that she wouldn't be familiar with the names,
Right.
so it didn't say my actual name dot, at whatever.
Right.
Um, and I did whatever I could to kind of cover my tracks and just, you know, like I had to hide from her.
Right.
And
Instead of the
and
other way around.
10 years on, still had concerns
Exactly.
about things blowing out of proportion again.
Right.
And, you know, and it's been hard looking back at what was going on in my experiences at the Comedy Store, and I was having a good time, and I was, making connections and
Hopeful.
hopeful, exactly. Even if it wasn't something that came about and, you know, I didn't expect a lot of money and fame, but I might have been able to make something out of what
Well,
I
and
was
it's either way, it
doing.
was something you enjoyed, right? I mean, you were.
And I had to leave that scene and alter my career direction. And um and I felt like I've just never really gotten traction. It's only been 10
Since
years,
then.
but it's been, a 10 years that I feel like I've not gotten the traction that I had at the time. So
So
yeah, she took some stuff from me that I'm.
I have a question about that too. So Elizabeth, to myself and through social media and to others and even to reporters in reporting this story, she has represented herself as a prominent comedian, well-known comedian. And depending on which article you read, some say she's prominent in New York, some say she's prominent in San Francisco, some say she's prominent in LA, and some say DC or Maryland. So they've she's, I don't know how that's happened, but either way, she's represented herself as being on multiple. Um,
Well, she writes her own press releases, she does her own, and that's what's kind of expected, I think, in the
right.
industry at the level that we're at.
There's some exaggeration in general, right? So I get that. But the level of success that she was, some of the shows that she said that she had appeared on as a comedian, we've done I've done a vast search. Other professionals that I've talked to that were covering this story have done an endless search for anything. So we've contacted network heads and such to try to see if there's something we're missing, because we want to represent the truth. But I did have a question about that because I mean, she was well known within the like the tighter community, right? I mean, she had friends and things like that, right? Maybe not so much for the
Right.
outside public, but she was well known in that. That's fair to say, correct? Okay, so
Yeah.
with that, what fears did you have, or what, or how do you think it affected you, having someone who was well known? Because you admittedly said you were kind of newer to the scene and you were just kind of, getting your feet wet, kind of thing. Um, what fears did you have then about that affecting you, and I guess what do you think the fallout was for real, for not just here's your fears to start with and here's what actually happened. What was that path like?
Well, I was concerned, right in the moments when, she's following me around the store, yelling names, telling people things.
Right.
There was another time that I had gone to just some industry event. I think it was the screening for a documentary film that a business associates, that she had also and I had also had gotten to meet. And that was actually through the medical marijuana community.
About
And
420 that you were talking about.
yeah, that was I think it was like a documentary called something like The American Drug War, and it was
Right. Yeah, I've seen some reference to it.
yeah, it was very good. It was a very good film. Um, and so I was at that event, and so was Elizabeth. And at one point, I was speaking with the wife of the director. Well, at the event, I was speaking with the wife, and Elizabeth came up to right alongside of us, making, like grunting noises and staring us down. And, it was obviously very uncomfortable for both of us. And the woman, thanked me, said goodbye to me, and I never heard from her again, which I take because, she also had a
So
relationship
awkward.
with Elizabeth, and
Right.
Elizabeth, made it clear to this woman that, you know, she had to choose.
It was like the
And
equivalent of her coming and peeing on her. It's like she's marking her with her scent or something and saying, this belongs to me, and putting you both in a very awkward and uncomfortable position.
because I had hoped to get a little bit of money from Elizabeth and that I wouldn't be dealing with the drama that I was at my apartment. Unfortunately, because I did, I had to move out. But the good news was at the time I moved in with a uh, more well-known comedian. She was on Last Comic Standing, one of the seasons, and um, appeared like she would be, a good mentor of sorts for me, that I
Right.
could learn a lot from her, living with her, helping her, and it was, I thought, an ideal opportunity. But even though this woman didn't know Elizabeth, when apparently Elizabeth heard that I was living with her, she started becoming fast friends with her. And next thing I know, there's, questions of why I can't just, you know, make up with Elizabeth, and, why am I having such a problem with her? And, you know, it became
And that
obvious
seems to be
that
a pattern that we've seen, with even with amongst my friends, and when I've these stories that I've um had to write on, all of them are in different time periods, and they all kind of follow that pattern. There's an issue, and then they try to turn the other person against their friend, and then they burn the new person, and then they just keep move she just keeps moving on. That's something I've kind of seen. So, I mean, given that fact, did you have any hope that wouldn't be an internal struggle for you in this, because
Well,
the comedy scene is so tight knit and everybody knows everybody and they travel from city to city and state to state. Did you ever feel like you could overcome that?
Elizabeth had done a very good job of poisoning my name with other comics and managers of some of the places that did comedy or bookers. And not that people believed necessarily the things that I was being accused of, or that I was really partaking in this, but they just didn't want to deal with the drama.
They didn't want to make a choice, right? They didn't
They
want to
didn't
have
want
to make a
her to
choice.
come around and you know do her shtick that's
Right. And directed
disruptive,
at them.
right? Whether it's directed at them or just disrupting what they have.
Right.
And you know so and eventually my money and my opportunities just dried up. So
Right.
I had to start making other choices, and it was really disappointing for a while. It
Yeah,
still is
I'm sorry.
some,
That's
but
super unfortunate. I have to. We're just about out of time, but I wanted to thank you so much for coming forward, not only for the article, but piecing some things together for me that I needed for other articles as well, and also, for coming to the podcast to kind of explain, what it was like, so that people can see if they see something like this coming their direction.
thank you very much, Jacqueline, for having me on your show and for all the work that you've been doing to get this story out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on. And for everybody who is interested in finding out more, I'm going to drop the links below to all 5 articles. There are 2 specific that are Stacey's story, as well as we have a follow up one that we're going to drop in of kind of like her after experiences that you can see. I'd also encourage others to check out Gloria Berry's story, not Gloria Beria, Gloria Berry's story as well, that as it is concerned in this. And I wish you well, and I hope that that this all goes well forward for you. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.